Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. So good morning, everyone. Just quickly, Peter, does your son enjoy reading?
Sadly, no.
Does he enjoy being read to?
As a child, yes, and now, no. And
Not so much. Okay. Well, there was something I was going to suggest about creatures from the Amazon, but it's being published in American Vedantist. It's called The Legend of Shiwido.
Oh, he might be interested in that. So I will look for that.
Yeah, you'll find it in 76 and 77, and the next chapter will be published in 78 at the end of February. It's a wonderful and fascinating story. Well, great good morning to you all. We, of course, are studying Swami Prabhavananda's talk on the path of knowledge, Advaita Vedanta, Jnana Yoga, and we're partway through. And so I'm going to start back just a little bit from where we left off last week. The path of knowledge, of course, the goal of the path of knowledge is realization.
Brother Akra, your audio is going in and out.
Well, that probably has to do with the internet, and I'm sorry, there's not much I can do about it. I'll try to talk a little louder and a little more directly to the microphone. Is that helpful, Robert? Is that better?
You're clear to me. It may be on Robert's end. How's everybody else doing?
Guys,
You're loud and clear for me.
clear for me too.
Okay,
Clear
well,
for me, Brother Shankara.
It's steady,
right.
right? It's steady right now.
Robert, you might want to disconnect and reconnect. I don't know.
It's steady now.
Okay, very good. Okay. So the goal of the path of knowledge, of course, the goal of all the yogas, but most directly, the path of knowledge points us toward realization of Brahman, that Brahman alone is, as it says in the Gita, she or he who sees Brahman in every action attains to Brahman. So the goal is the realization of Brahman, and that all that you experience and all that you are is nothing less than Brahman. Great sayings from the Upanishads are, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and its corollary, Tattvamasi, that thou art. You also are nothing but Brahman. So now I'll start reading from the Swami's talk. The Katha Upanishad emphatically points out, by the purified mind alone, Brahman is to be attained. And purity means simply this: you come to a stage of development through practice of spiritual disciplines when there is no other desire for anything. I'm going to stop and expand on that. When it means no other desire for anything, it means exactly that. No thing in universe, in your possible experience, is of as much interest to you as your realization of Brahman. So no thought, no feeling, no perception, no sense object or sense experience. It has all been set aside. The mirror of experience has been set aside. The final stage is setting aside the mirror. So there's nothing left but what the mirror reflects. But when there's nothing left but what the mirror reflects, you as a being, are that mirror. So there is no more mirror either. And what becomes of the mirror is said in various poetic ways. Adi Shankaracharya said, "My mind fell like a hailstone into the ocean of consciousness and therein dissolved." Of course, that's a very pregnant metaphor, and that a hailstone is made up of many layers. So the dissolving of the mind doesn't happen necessarily all at once. This is very beautifully explained by James Schwartz in some of his talks, and by Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharshi and so on. Although Ramana Maharshi is very direct, he just says, forget about all the layers, just go right to the heart of the matter. Who is this I that is thinking and speaking? But purity means simply this. You come to a stage of development through practice of spiritual disciplines when there is no other desire for anything. When you desire nothing but to have this wisdom, to realize the infinite, that is the starting point of a spiritual aspirant. Now that may sound very daunting. That's the starting point. Swami Prabhavananda also, in conversation with Swami Turiyananda, said, but if you achieve that starting point, you've achieved the whole thing. And Swami Turiyananda said, I see you have solved the puzzle. And so the Swami says, when you have no other desire but this wisdom to realize the infinite, that is the starting point of a spiritual aspirant. And then the realization that the Swami had, which he expressed to Turiyananda, and that is also the goal. Understand that it is not a suppression of desires, nor is it something that you feel temporarily. It is that you have come to the clear understanding that the infinite, and that in the infinite alone there is joy. In other words, everything else that you might experience or want to experience, you have found empty of real joy. And so you've come to the clear understanding that in the infinite alone there is joy. And what happens next when this realization, this full realization comes, since there's no experiencer there, there is no longer any mirror for what is being realized. There's no way to express it in words or concepts. It is, as Jesus said, the peace that passeth all understanding. Now, before we go on, I'd like to ask if there are any comments or questions about
Yes,
what's been read so far. Yes,
yes,
Robert.
I have one very strong. Are you saying that you should, if once you have attained that, you should stop your teaching? I should stop playing my music. I should stop engaging in this physical world. Is that what?
Absolutely not, Robert. Absolutely not. And it becomes your choice. And I encourage you to read the last two chapters, all of it for that matter, but at least the last two chapters of the Vivekachudamani by Adi Shankaracharya. He explains the possibilities for life as an embodied being after realization. He explains it in beautiful and poetic language, very, very appealing to anyone that has your point of view. And
What?
you will go on doing those things that well, as Sri Ramakrishna says, you can no longer put a foot wrong. If most people who attain realization, it is said, this is, I'm speaking now as a parrot because this is not something of my own personal knowledge. It is said that most people who attain realization simply leave the body behind. They simply merge with that which is we call Brahman or the real, and do not return to the body. There are another number of people who return to the body, and they will stay a maximum of 21 days. Why 21 days? I don't know the answer to that. And then there are some few others that, having attained the realization of the fact that they are Brahman, return to teach. And Sri Ramakrishna says that they do this because they retain just this thin silver thread of just enough ego of knowledge or of love to share the path. They cannot share the realization. They can only share this is how to achieve this realization. And as it is said by the Swami, the last thing that was read, they have the clear understanding that in the infinite alone there is joy. So everything else is less.
Well, I've heard that statement many times before, but when you said it today, I heard it a different way. I heard that I would you lose the interest in doing these earthly things.
Yes.
And
You may.
And you no longer have that desire to do them.
That's apparently what happens to most people who come to this state of being.
Okay.
But it's not an imperative. It is not dogma or doctrine. It's simply their choice, their sweet choice.
Yeah, I guess you lose interest. You don't want to do it. You find it's not something that's primary, and you're wasting time doing this.
Well,
these things.
You may say that wasting time. That isn't how Adi Shankaracharya puts it in the last two chapters of Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination. He just says, you do it out of sheer a kind of there's still joy, but it's the reflected joy of the pure infinite joy. And so what you do is different in its character, and it looks different to people. So, and as a result, since most people won't understand, many of them will think you're crazy because of the way you behave. This is what's said. So Swami Prabhavananda was asked, well, if I attain this state, Swami, won't I lose everything? And he said, no, my child, you don't lose anything, you gain everything. And so all possibilities are, as Shankaracharya points out, all are open to you. Very good questions and commentary, Robert. Excellent. This is exactly what we should be talking about.
Brother, can I make a comment?
Please, dear.
It's like you don't give up anything. You can do your normal duties, like whatever household duties. But still, when you know this, when you have self-realization, it is definitely a clear understanding of the world. You understand yourself better, and then you understand that. I think that's what Swamiji is trying to tell us. We understand, we have self-realization by going silence. Then you understand the whole world better, but that those things don't become the central point of your life, right?
Well,
we do everything, but they don't become the main thing in our life. Like, let's say a person wears a diamond necklace. That's not going to be the happy thing in their life, but this self-realization is the main thing that
yes.
gives you clear understanding. That's what I'm understanding.
Well, there's something that is beautifully said by the poet and illumined soul Kabir.
Yes.
He asks in a poem, who is this man who can go and shop in the marketplace and then come home and take care of his family, and that most people call Kabir?
Yes.
And then his answer, I don't have the slightest idea. He no longer has any upadis. There's no longer, I mean, there is this ability, as you said, to go about the daily duties, to shop in the marketplace, take care of his family.
Exactly.
He hasn't grown two horns and began to hop about like a goat. He still looks like Kabir, and most people call him Kabir. But he said, who is this man? I don't have the slightest idea. There are no longer any descriptions, no longer any upadis that fit.
Agree with you 100%. Thank you.
Because why? All upadi is limitation. That's one translation of upadi. All of that is limitation, and there is no limitation left. I don't have the slightest idea, he says.
Agree with you. Thank you.
I encourage you to any of you to find that book, Love Poems from God, and read the poems of Kabir and the other 11 illumined souls in that book, because they reflect what it's like to, as Robert said, go on doing
Yes.
after illumination. They go on doing out of, and in the case of all of these, because of the selection of the translator, interpreter, Daniel Ladinsky, these are all people who are teaching from what Sri Ramakrishna called that slim ego of love. So they are love poems from God.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone? This is
yes, Brother Shankara, this is Swayam.
Yes.
Yeah, I joined a little late, so I hope my comment is not disconnected. But after realization, there's a perfect choice. I mean, they are equally happy not doing anything as well. Like that Swami, I forget his name. I mean, he wouldn't wear.
Trilanga Swami
Yes,
in
who, right.
Varanasi. Yes.
Yeah, who didn't wear anything, who could just go days without, eating or whatever. So they can
But
either do or not do.
he radiated something so powerful that people flocked to see him, though he said not a word. And Sri Ramakrishna bowed down to him.
Right. So that's all my comment was. Like, they have sort of the choice what they want to do, kind of.
It's one way of talking about it, yeah. Choice, I mean. I don't think they would say that.
Yes, I may not have chosen the right words.
No.
but-
It's I'm not scolding or correcting. I'm just saying that they from what Shankaracharya says in the Vivekachudamani, they see it differently. When we next study Jnana Yoga as one of our monthly studies, which will be a few months down the road, a couple of months, 3 months down the road, I think, I will take up the last 2 chapters of this Adi Shankaracharya's Vivekachudamani, because it's so often mentioned as a source for us. I'll take up those last 2 chapters and what he says. And it's truly remarkable, because it is both beautiful and awe-inspiring. So anything else from anyone?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, Neera.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, Vijay.
this is Vijay. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Just a comment about the 21 days that we.
Oh,
spoke about
what do you
divine
know about the 21 days, Vijay?
Yeah, only as a piece of information that Gandhiji, as a part of his non-violent, peaceful path towards India's freedom struggle, he had a fast unto death. And after 21 days, by that time he was so frail that people and the doctors were afraid that he's about to die. And that's when they all collected together to request him to please break your fast. And he agreed to. So that was an actual example in life of life lasting for 21 days without food.
Yeah, I don't think there's any connection between that and the 21 days having to do with a realized soul, Vijay. I think that's a coincidence. I don't think the two things are connected. But you know, who am I to say? Gandhiji did not. Well, I don't know enough about Gandhiji to say anything. Okay. But that is an interesting fact that he ended his fast after 21 days. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
I think you explained this, but I'm just wondering, why, when a person reaches self-realization, would there not be a great impetus to serve people? Is there not, from self-realization, some understanding that there is immense suffering in the world? Why would most people, once they reach self-realization, as you say, choose to leave the body? And
Sonny, I don't know the answer to that question. Sri Ramakrishna says that out of compassion, love, some stay to teach. Out of knowledge, some stay to teach. Adi Shankaracharya is an example on the one hand. Narada is an example on the other. Suffering in the world and our understanding of it is a lesser understanding, though Sri Krishna says that along the path, those who have this compassionate heart and the empathy and do serve others are very dear to him. But I think that's more related to savikalpa samadhi, the experience of your oneness with the divine, and then your ability to see the divine in others and begin to serve Jiva as Shiva. It is inconceivable to us and therefore inexpressible what it is that anyone might bring back from the realization of Brahman, what it means to become one with Brahman. As I said, the last two chapters of the Viveka Chudamani are the best example from this path of knowledge that I've ever encountered. And so I encourage anyone who wishes to read that as Shankaracharya's explanation about what happens after realization to one who remains embodied. And as I said, in a couple of months, I'll take up those two chapters and we'll discuss them on a Sunday. Thanks for the question, Sonny. It's a good question, but I don't think we can possibly understand in any meaningful way what it is to return to embodiment after the full realization of your unity with Brahman, having become one with Brahman.
Well, Sonny spoke of suffering.
Yes.
And suffering, to me, from my experience of dealing or studying every religion, suffering seems to be a necessary ingredient for any and every soul, well, maybe not every, but many souls, to reach a certain point where enlightenment becomes visible in a distant way.
Robert, thank you for bringing that up. That's very true. And it no doubt something like that is what underlies Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi's comment, in time you will come to see all suffering as a blessing.
Yeah, that was my point. It seems to me that suffering is a necessary thing, and it's not, we look at it and think of it as something to be avoided at all costs, but it seems to be a necessary ingredient.
Well, this is why Swami Prabhavananda said, I'm sure, he said, people have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. People have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort. And so this is, and that there's a direct corollary between that, of course, and what Holy Mother said when she said, in time you will understand that all suffering is a blessing. This is exactly what we should be doing as a class. Thank you for your remarks, Sunny, for yours, Robert. Everyone who's commented, VJ, thank you. We go forward.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Could you expand a little bit on that one? How do we sustain and comfort? I mean, we see the suffering besides compassion and maybe offering help. Is that sustaining and comforting and
What does sustain mean? If they need some money, give them some money. If they need some food, give them some food. If they are lonesome, be with them and comfort them. Oftentimes you'll find that they are not capable of receiving these things. They don't even want them. And it becomes difficult for us then if we take an ego-centered position. They should want this from me. They should want some money. They should want some comforting, so on and so forth.
so we should not get affected if they do not want our help.
Exactly.
I mean, it should not affect us.
Yes, exactly. Because it is not up to us to redirect another human being. If they ask for that, then it is up to us to offer what we can. But it is not up to us to redirect their lives in a way that we think
But
is better.
isn't it painful to watch them suffer? But we should not get affected, but it hurts to watch them suffer. And
Well, that's compassion. And of course, your prayers, not for some specific outcome, but simply for their well-being, for their comfort, for their joy. Those are what we can offer. This is one of the most potent forms of sustenance and comfort we can offer.
thank you.
Swami Prabhavananda said to someone who asked him, does prayer work? Does prayer do any good? And he said, what? Do you think you are disconnected? Of course it does good. So thank you for that question. That's right on point. What do we do? What does it mean to sustain and comfort? How do we move forward in the presence of someone else's suffering, particularly someone close to us?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Just the very specific last words that you just said, when someone is very close to us. I'm saying from a real life example. And one of the most difficult times to help sustain somebody and comfort somebody is when there's a loss of a family member and one would really, really want to help somebody, but there's no way one is able to find the right words. And it's like all I can say is it's a very difficult situation, and I don't know what the answer is. How to comfort somebody.
And it is a very, very difficult situation indeed. After Swami Vivekananda's second visit to the West, he returned and was living at Bellarmine. And one time, Swami Turiyananda came into the corridor outside Swami Vivekananda's room and found Swami Vivekananda pounding his head against the wall so hard and so frequently that his forehead was bleeding. And Swami Turiyananda said, Swamiji, what is the matter? And Vivekananda said, attachment, attachment. It is so hard to be rid of attachment. And he explained to Swami Turiyananda that he was speaking of the two Hale sisters, the family that had rescued him before the Parliament of Religions. Mrs. Hale had rescued him from sitting on the curb, brought him in, gave him food, gave him a shower or bath, whatever, and washed his clothes and got him presentable again. And he formed a deep and abiding relationship. This was his, of course, first visit to the West. He formed an abiding relationship with them. And he began to think of those daughters as his very own. Mr. and Mrs. Hale were both very dear to him, but the daughters especially. And so he developed some ideas of how their life should go and advised them. And you can find this in his letters. You can find all of this information in his letters to these girls, how he wanted what he wanted for their lives. But they were not doing that. They were living some other kinds of life, which he discovered on his second visit to the West. I mean, discovered it very personally, face to face with them, how they were being these carefree, self-willed young women. And he found it absolutely well, he was pounding his head against the wall to the point where his forehead was bleeding. Now, is that all that we are? Is that all that Swami Vivekananda was? No, later that same day, I think it was the same day, Turiyananda was asked to wake Swami Vivekananda from a nap. He came in, and on the bed where Swami Vivekananda's body should have been were 12 Shiva Nataraj, 12 images of Shiva dancing in a circle, holding their arms. Not holding hands, but holding their arms as people do in that kind of dance, circle dancing. These images were about a foot tall, as I recall, and they were dancing in a ring there on Swamiji's bed. Turiyananda withdrew, came back some time later, and there was Vivekananda's body asleep on the bed. And so he woke him up. So this is partly an answer to the question, what happens after realization? We can't possibly understand what it's like to be such a one. We can't possibly understand. All we can do is either mentally or actually physically bow down in awe and reverence and say, what have you to teach me by your actions and by your words, O Holy One? Anything else?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Aaron.
I guess want to give a final comment to this subject about how Joseph Campbell speaks about slaying dragons and the spiritual quest. And
please speak up just a little bit, Aaron.
Okay. Yes, Joseph Campbell speaks about slaying dragons and relating that to the spiritual quest. And we can't we can't end people's suffering because they have their own spiritual quest to take on, but we can, as their brothers and sisters, do our best to help them. But we can't expect to be able to fully remove their suffering.
No, and we can't slay their dragons for them. We cannot slay their dragons for them. You know, in a simple way, Sri Ramakrishna puts it like this, there's food. Will it satisfy your hunger if someone else eats? Not unless you're Sri Krishna, who, of course, identifies with everyone, or is everyone. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, we can't slay the dragon for anyone else. Anyone else? All right. We'll go on with the Swami's talk. What is ignorance? What is bondage? To desire or to find satisfaction in the finite. I'm going to read that again, simply because if we memorize it, we have a definition for what ignorance and bondage is. What is ignorance? What is bondage? To desire or to find satisfaction in the finite. As long as you are satisfied with the finite, desire for the infinite does not come. But of course, one does not long for that. But of course, one does not long for that all at once, or all at once become desireless. It is a gradual unfoldment. You've heard it said from here many times, quoting Swami Sridharananda. Oh, be patient, my children, my dears. He says, my dears. Oh, be patient, my dears. It happens slowly and slowly. But of course, one does not long for all that all at once, or all at once become desireless. It is a gradual unfoldment. When you go to meditate, you find that many distractions arise in your mind. If you struggle for a few years, whether you are a dualist or a non-dualist, and your mind is not concentrated as you continue, and wait a minute. If you struggle for a few years, whether you are a dualist or a non-dualist, and your mind is not concentrated, as you continue, a sweetness comes and you get a glimpse. In other words, there's the possibility of real concentration, but even if that doesn't come, then there will be a sweetness and you get a glimpse. It first comes in this way. You become convinced that Atman is here. And when he said that, he raised his hand to his chest. You become convinced that Atman is here, that God is here. You can't see him, don't know him, but you have that conviction. And this is a reality. It can be a reality for each and every one of us. You will, as Swami Prabhavananda said, you will begin to feel that living presence. You become convinced that Atman is here, that God is here. You can't see him, don't know him, but you have that conviction because it is your experience. With that conviction comes a thrill in your whole being. Again, a reality available to all of us, that level of bliss. With that conviction comes a thrill in your whole being. Sri Ramakrishna said that God is the bigger magnet. Worldly enjoyments, small magnets. The small magnets draw you now because that bigger magnet is not attracting you yet. The point of a needle covered with dust cannot attract. So clean it up. Wash out the impurities with tears for God. most of you know that there is something called Chaitanya's prayer. Chaitanya's prayer explains this in detail. If any of you would like a copy of Chaitanya's prayer that don't have, just email me and I'll send you a copy of Chaitanya's prayer. It starts, chant the name of the Lord and his glories unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust, raging furiously within. And it goes on to talk about how to wash out the impurities. This is again Sri Ramakrishna. People shed jugs of tears. People shed jugs full of tears for a husband or wife or object, Sri Ramakrishna said. But how many shed tears for God? If we persist, each and every one of us will shed tears for God. As longing comes and a glimpse comes, you feel the magnet drawing you. All those who have experienced anything in spiritual life will tell you that it is grace. In other words, it's not something that you've whomped up. It's not something of your imagination. No, it is a reality. And it comes from having dispelled enough of the darkness and ignorance that surrounds it, which was characterized just a few lines ago as dust covering the magnet. You've dispelled enough of that to where the magnet, the needle of the magnet now points toward the big magnet, and you feel that thrill, and all those who have experienced anything in spiritual life will tell you that it is grace. The follower of the path of knowledge will call this the grace of the Atman. When you get a glimpse of that, when that large magnet begins to draw you, when you become interested in the natural tendency of your mind, when you become interested, the natural tendency of your mind will be to flow toward Brahman. Now, isn't that an amazing statement? The natural tendency of your mind, past a certain point, the natural tendency of your mind is to flow toward the divine. Although that doesn't mean that all hindrances are left, that there won't be thorny patches on the path, that there will be distractions and so on, but you will find again and again that your mind is drawn more and more toward Brahman. To come back to the 3 steps of learning the truth, reflecting upon it, and meditating on it, those of you who know the Sanskrit term Shravana, hearing the truth, reflecting upon it, Manana, and meditating upon it, Nididhyasana. So to come back to the 3 steps of learning the truth, reflecting upon it, and meditating upon it, what truth are we to hear? The truth that, and here it is, the truth that I am Brahman, or thou art that. This you hear from the lips of a teacher. That's the Shravana. Then you have to reflect upon that. Because if you consider your empirical self as Brahman, you don't understand. your empirical self, the relative reality of your embodiment. This you hear, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, or Tattvamasi, thou art, that thou art. This you hear from the lips of a teacher. Then you have to reflect upon that, because if you consider your empirical self as Brahman, you don't understand. What is the self? What is that one? What is it that is one with Brahman? In order to reflect upon this, you must have Shraddha, faith. Faith in the words of the Guru and in the words of the scriptures. Try to understand exactly what the Guru says. Try to understand what the scriptures say. This is reflection. Now, what does it mean to try to understand? It means to take a very careful and completely non-judgmental assessment of the way that you now think, speak, and act, and compare and contrast that with what you've been told by the teacher. As you work through the ways that you think, that results in the way that you speak and act, you'll see that the way you think, speak, and act does not betray an understanding that you are Brahman, that you are the divine spirit, that you are the being. It betrays that you think that you are the body, the mind, the intellect. It betrays the fact that you think you are the doer. Now, all of that is a relative reality. As Adi Shankaracharya puts it, it is a superimposition of a lesser reality on the truth. And of course, the classic superimposition idea is you come across a coiled up rope in the semi-darkness and you see and react as if that coiled up rope is a snake. For the time that you believe that is a snake, for you it is a snake. For the time that you believe you are the body, you are the mind, you are the intellect, you are the one, you are the actor, you are the doer, all that is a reality for you. But it's not what the teacher says. It's not what the scriptures say. Which is the truer? That is reflection. Try to understand intellectually the simple truth. God is here within. If you have the faith that He is within, you attain knowledge. Because the truth is stronger, the higher truth is stronger. It is the stronger magnet. It is the stronger truth than the truth that you have been living from. And so it will ultimately, if you keep after it, triumph. This is what he means. Try to understand what the scriptures say. Try to understand what the teacher said. This is reflection. Try to understand intellectually the simple truth. God is here within. If you have the faith that He is within, you attain knowledge. Now we have a few minutes left before the end of the hour. Anything at all from anyone about what's been said? or what's not been said that you need to hear said, or any questions?
Shankara.
Yes, Janaki.
I think that this ties in really well with the beginning when you were talking about getting to the starting point
Mm-hmm.
and how that can be daunting. But the thing is, as I understand it, once you get to the starting point, that is where God takes your hand and grace pulls you along from there.
Right. You've hit the nail right on the head, Janaki. As Gita Prana said in a retreat that she did for us, then Mother holds the door open for you. She may hold it open with her foot, or she may pull you through the keyhole, but she'll get you to the other side.
And then related to that, getting to that starting point,
Mm-hmm.
one of the key behaviors is repeating the name of the Lord, i.e. japam,
Mm-hmm.
as a purification of the mirror of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Could you speak about that just a little bit, about how that, what that is like, that process? And
Well, that's interesting that you should ask that question, because that was just what was in this mind this morning as I was in the chapel. Because we are, that all of reality is made of vibration. And this is not just the Vedas talking, although we can believe the Vedas talking and Vasishta talking, that all that we experience is nothing more than a vibration of consciousness. The physicists have come to the same irreversible conclusion. So if we are vibration and we repeat a vibration that is a higher vibration, which is what japam is. Om Kling Krishna, Om Kling Krishna, Om Kling Krishna. All three of those are vibratory realities. Om, Kling, manifestation, the result of manifestation, Krishna. Om Kling Krishna. That's a mantra. When we repeat that, it actually changes the vibratory reality of our body-mind complex. This is what became apparent this morning as this became apparent in this mind. It actually changes the very nature of it. And so that is the power of japam. It changes the nature of chitta. It changes the nature of the mind stuff. And so this is the purification.
does that mean that speaking it aloud is more powerful than having it in your mind?
Boy, how do you, again, it was something that came this morning. No, it's just two aspects: the gross reality of Shabda Brahman as sound that we can hear, and then the more subtle. So saying it aloud is good. Saying it silently with just the lips is good. Saying it just in the mind is good. It will have an effect at a different level of chitta, remembering that it is all one. It seems different to us. It's meant to seem different to us because we're made of the three gunas. And so we have not only this manifestation of revelation through sattva, but we have the manifestation of concealment through tamas and a manifestation of projection through rajas. And so The saying it aloud helps with the purification of tamas. Saying it silently in the mind helps with the purification, that is to say, what is concealing the sattva.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. Really right on point. This is how it actually works, and is the understanding has emerged from here. That it actually changes the vibratory reality. That we actually change. And that's why when you're in the presence of one of these holy ones, you feel something very different. When you're in the presence of Swami Sarvadevananda or Swami Yogatmananda or Swami Sarvapriyananda or Swami Harinamananda, you feel something different coming from them. They're vibrating at a different rate, and it feels good to be in their presence. It feels good to be in their presence. It's soothing because of the nature of what is emanating from them. What's emanating from them? Some kind of vibration. Light is a vibration. Sound is a vibration. There's such a spectrum of the vibration universe. I mean, if you want to read some interesting things about this, just look up the name Dr. Don Lincoln, PhD. And Don Lincoln, PhD, he's head of the Fermi Lab and one of the principal researchers at the CERN Institute, that biggest particle accelerator in Switzerland. And his description of the nature of reality is vibration. It's not only awesome, it's beautiful. Don Lincoln, like the President Lincoln. Anyone else?
Brother Shankar.
Yes, two people are speaking at once. It was Sunny, and who else was speaking?
Swayam.
Okay, Swayam, could you wait for Sunny, please?
Sure.
Okay, Sunny, go ahead.
I just wanted to extend my question of grace.
Yes.
The first time I heard about grace was from a Christian writer. I think in Christianity, it's a very common topic, particularly how suffering leads to grace. And I'm not really sure how it's explained, but is the concept of suffering leading to grace similar to how Chaitanya speaks about it? Or
suffering does not necessarily, in the moment, lead to grace. Suffering may be experienced by people in such a way that they still react to it egoistically. Why is this happening to me? And they resent it, they're angry about it, and so on. It's only after we redirect our attention and begin this spark of desire for spiritual understanding. There must be something more than this, that we begin to understand things differently. Now, Sri Ramakrishna says, and for that matter, it's just mirrors what Christ said, the breeze of grace is always blowing. It isn't that grace is something that comes and goes, and sometimes you can have it and sometimes you can't. No, the breeze of grace is always blowing. Sri Ramakrishna says you have only to raise your sails. What does raise your sails mean? Turn your attention in that direction and let your attention rest on those things where grace can make such a difference. like the nature of suffering and what suffering is for you and how you can see it as a blessing rather than as something directed at you, punishment or something. Does that answer the question, Sonny?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Swayam?
Can you hear me, Brother Shankara?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. Talking about vibrations, I think the vibrations even come across the Zoom, Brother Shankara. That's why I'm so compelled to join. I mean, every class. So that was one thing. And I'm trying to remember what my question was. Yes, regarding the japa, if it is going on silently in the background as we are doing other things and our mind may not be totally in the words of the japa, um, it still has does it still have some effect in purifying the mind?
Both Holy Mother was very emphatic about this. Her answer was yes. And Sri Ramakrishna was so often he was slightly humorous about it. He was speaking. Let me just say what Holy Mother said. Holy Mother said it doesn't matter at all how you say the japam, it will have an effect. The more consciously and presently you say it, the more powerful and immediate the effect will be. The fact that you're saying it in the background with other things going on in the foreground, that's just the nature of the koshas. But she says that the koshas being the sheaths, the various aspects of our being, she says that it continues to have a beneficial effect. Sri Ramakrishna speaking, he was at Balaram's house. Balaram was one of the sustainers of Sri Ramakrishna, and his family was very dear to the whole Ramakrishna crowd. As a matter of fact, Swami Brahmananda, Raja Maharaj, left the body in Balaram's house. He spent a lot of time there. Sri Ramakrishna was once there, and they were sitting around in conversation, and Balaram's father was there. Now, Balaram's father was a very devout Vaishnava, so he was constantly saying his beads. Wonderful, good. But Sri Ramakrishna could detect that his mind was really not on the japam, that it was on some business affairs. He was a wealthy businessman, landlord, and so on and so forth. But he was saying, and so what he said was, "Oh, Balaram's father, he's always saying his japam, but for him, what would take a year will take a year and a half." In other words, that the effect of the japam will be slower because it is not, his mind is not directed to it. His consciousness, his awareness is not with the japam. But, what would have taken a year will take a year and a half. Does that answer it, Swayam?
Yes, Brother Shankara. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? This is perfect. This is exactly what we should be doing.
It's very hard being in like that.
Say it
like the
again,
midst-
Aaron.
Yes, it's sorry. It's very hard being like in the midst of these times where everyone's still having the social distance, and therefore like we can't like go like visit the temples and like seek the company of holy ones. Like,
Well,
and
we're in the company of holy ones right now, Aaron. It's not as tangible perhaps, but that's what Swayam was mentioning, that she said she felt the vibrations coming, the time and space, and there's no doubt that what you say is absolutely true. It is more difficult now, but time and space are an illusion. not just from a scriptural point of view, but Albert Einstein was absolutely adamant about this, triple underlined. Space and time are an illusion. So the more you put your awareness with a holy one, whether they're embodied or not embodied, the more you will be in their presence. For example, if you wanted to have the company of Swami Yogatmananda. Now, Swami Yogatmananda lives in Providence, Rhode Island, some, I don't know, 1,000 miles away, whatever it is. But time and space being an illusion, all you have to do is pull up one of his talks on YouTube or wherever you find it, and then begin to think about him. Begin to think about him. Begin to want his company. The more you practice that, Aaron, the more it will be a reality for you. And we are in the company of the holy right now. There's a screenful right here in front of me. And you are among those. You are one of those. Why? Because this is the way we direct our time on a Saturday at midday. This is how this is what we're being now. And it's very powerful and has a real effect. The more we focus on it, the stronger the effect is.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Mm-hmm.
Brother
And please do what I'm saying. Find some holy person, embodied or not, doesn't matter. And just bring your attention fully to them.
Brother
Someone else, yes.
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
In response to Aaron's going to temple, we don't have to go to temple, in my opinion. Our body is the temple. Corona gave us more chances to sit inside the house. Go into silence and know ourselves, to know ourselves. I think we had the best chance since last February.
Well,
meditate.
Haima, you're absolutely right.
We don't have to go anywhere.
However, it should
Brother
be
Shankara?
noted. Hang on just one moment. I want to fully answer Haima. It's important to remember your age and your experience.
That is
and
true.
Aaron's. I remember very well what it was like to be Aaron's.
I agree with you.
I'm blessed with that, and I mean it. I'm blessed with that ability to remember what it was like.
Right.
The company of others.
It does help.
Oh, it was absolutely essential.
Very helpful. Sure, I agree with that, considering the age. And also today's reading, just to nail to the point, every little thing that we should be doing to get there. Just this 1-2 pages explained everything.
Yes, the Swami is very good at that.
Yes, it takes many years. It doesn't come in 1 month, 2 months, 1 week, 1 year.
No.
You have to continue to do it regardless of distractions of your mind. You continue to do it, and then it just becomes your part of life. Every day you will not give up on that one. You just continue to do it for years.
Exactly. And it does take years.
Yes.
Now, someone else wanted to speak.
Sure, thank you, Shankara.
Thank you, Haima.
No.
Who was that other person who wanted to speak?
Brother Shankara?
Yes,
Oh,
Neera.
yes. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say, but
It's quite all right.
I was just reminded of Swami Yogeshananda when we were talking about holy company. Just incidentally, his birthday is coming. And also when we were talking about pandemic, that we cannot go to the temples, but we all have a little shrine in our homes. And that's an opportunity to be more in the shrine during the pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. For those of us who are inclined to that sort of thing, it's not dogmatic. There's no doctrine that says. It's just that if we do spend time there, we will be comforted. But if we're distracted and we can't bring ourselves to do it, well, that's the reality of the moment. And so
Swami Yogeshananda on Tuesday, I believe, is his Wednesday, the 3rd of February.
Yeah.
I think his birthday.
And he'll be almost
I
100
was just
years
remembering
old.
him, so I just mentioned it. Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be almost 100 years old, 98 or something like that.
Yes. Wonderful.
Amazing. He said, or not so long ago, he said, well, since I'm not leaving the body, I think I'll live to be 100 just for the novelty of it. Swami Yogeshananda, for those of you who know him, is known for his wry and dry sense of humor and sharp wit. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Until next we meet, which could be as early as tomorrow morning at 11. Let us be so grateful for the company that we have shared this morning. Dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, peace, peace, peace. Om, shanti, shanti, shanti. Amen, amen, amen. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. May you go forward in the Mother's loving and protective embrace. The phone says that's a scam, likely. I'm not going to do anything about it. Let's just let it ring itself out. Any final thoughts from anyone? All right, dears. Until tomorrow morning then at 11 o'clock, when the topic will be Swamiji's Bhakti Yoga. We'll start with two things that are a little unusual. First, since it's been mentioned a number of times but not defined, what are the four pillars of Dharma that are said to become a reality again fully in the Satyug, and only one of which, truth, is remaining and is under attack in this time. So we'll start with the definition of the four pillars of yoga, and then four pillars of Dharma. And then we will do a guided meditation, which will give us some, it may give us this glimpse that the Swami is talking about, at least. There's the potential for that. And then we'll talk about Swami Vivekananda's Bhakti Yoga, which is powerful, what he has to say about it. So, and then for those of you who are so inclined, on Monday evenings at 8 o'clock, a group of us gather and read and discuss poems from that book, Love Poems from God. Tuesday evenings at 8 o'clock, of course, we study the life of Holy Mother. And Wednesday evenings, we're studying chapter 4 of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. So always, it's as Rosanna Dana's daddy said, for those of you who know that beautiful character created by Gilda Radner, as Rosanna Dana's daddy said, it's always something. So for us, it's always something positive, at least the possibility there. So any final thought from any of you? Oh, I should mention, for those of you who aren't there tomorrow morning, we lost a member of our congregation on January 18th. Not to the virus. Many of you will remember Paul Rentz. Paul was one of the more active participants in the Q&A when we met in the chapel, and he would often come in after talks in the chapel and stay with us for some time on Sunday afternoon. Paul died of a heart attack, sudden and unexpected, on January 18th. I don't know any details at this point. I've asked for that, but of course, his widow, Sue Matthews, is very devastated, so it may be some time before we have some details. Paul was in his late 60s. He had retired, and so he was somewhere around 67, 68. And all that we know is that he was out walking, developed a severe pain in his back, called his wife to come and get him. By the time she got there, it had become a very severe pain in his chest. And she took him to the emergency room, and by the time they arrived there, the heart attack was so massive that there was nothing that they could do. So he passed away. That's all the details that I have.
Brother Shankara, the psychologist Paul?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. He was in our communication group with the Clarice.
Yes, as a matter of fact, his wife,
Yes, I am
his
so
wife,
sorry.
in speaking to me about it, said that he was particularly keen. One of the things that he said, that he was particularly keen that Clarice and the group know how much that group meant to him.
Yes, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yes. So there's a bit of additional information from Haima. He worked as a psychologist during his career, but was very actively studying spiritual and other philosophy in the last few years. Thank you, Haima.
You're welcome, Brother Shankara. That's heartbreaking to hear. He just dropped out of our group. He was there until last month. Then he decided to take off.
Well,
we haven't seen him in 1 month.
Well,
sorry to hear
in
that.
any event, all of your sweet and loving thoughts. He was cremated already, so
Yes.
all that's been taken care of. All of your sweet and loving thoughts toward Paul and his wife, Sue Matthews. They'd been married for 5 years. So anything that you can hold in the way of sweet thoughts for them, as Swami Prabhavananda said, what, do you think you're disconnected? No.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
We're still connected with him, and though she only visited here once, she had a lovely experience when she did come, and that's what she told me yesterday. So I don't know that I'll have any further information by tomorrow morning, but there we are for the time being. So far as I know, we have not lost anyone to the virus, which is from our congregation. We may have lost loved ones or near ones, but at least from this congregation, by the grace, no one has been taken by the virus. Any other final thoughts from anyone? All right, dears, I will end it there. And for those of you who are so moved, see you tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Bye-bye, dear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.